Today I'm going to be speaking with Gissou Nia, who is a human rights lawyer in the US and a leader on the End Gender Apartheid campaign. This incredible global campaign calls on states to recognise gender apartheid as a crime against humanity by expanding the legal definition of apartheid under international laws. By coming together and calling for this change, the cruel system of gender apartheid can be brought to an end. The campaign highlights how oppression against women and girls in places like Iran and Afghanistan amount to more than just gender discrimination. Rather, the Taliban and the Islamic Republic of Iran are perpetuating a more extreme, systematic and structural war against women, which are designed to dehumanise and repress them for the purpose of entrenching power. As the women, life, freedom protests in Iran enter a new phase, and as the government continues to repress women and demonstrators, I'll be speaking to Gissou about the situation on the ground and the significance of recognising crimes of gender apartheid. Hey Gissou, thank you so much for finding the time to chat with me today. When I first heard about the End Gender Apartheid campaign, I just immediately knew that I wanted to get involved. It is just such a powerful way of standing up with girls and women in Iran and Afghanistan. Before we get into the specifics of the campaign, can you just give us a brief update on what's happening in Iran at the moment and how the demonstrations have evolved since Masha Amani was murdered in September last year?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for having me on. And I think a lot of people around the world saw this tragic killing of Mahsa Amini in September 2022. And, lots of visuals of women taking to the streets, campaigning against this mandatory hijab law that is on the books in Iran by, cutting their hair in public demonstrations and throwing their hijabs into the bonfires. And there was a lot of action on the streets, I would say, in that period, in the fall. Now we see that the streets have quieted, and in part, it's because of the fact that the Islamic Republic of Iran has been executing those who have been involved in the protests. They've threatened to execute, hundreds and issued death sentences. And they are responsible for enforced disappearances of some of these young women that participated in these protests. So it had a bit of a chilling effect, but the resistance continues in many different ways. One thing that you'll see in Iran today is that many, many women are defying the mandatory hijab laws. And so that is a very strong statement in when you live under a dictatorship that enforces the mandatory hijab through violence and even death.
And is there any idea of how many women are missing or have been murdered? Or not just women, presumably, because are they murdering even men if they're going out to support the women?
Yeah, there was a count of more than 500 people that were killed in the protests. But of course, we don't necessarily have accurate numbers because the state, who really is responsible for giving official figures on how many people have been killed in violence, is not transparent.
And before the movement of the Women Life Freedom movement began, what was life like for women and girls in Iran?
Since the Islamic Republic entrenched power after the revolution of 1979 in Iran, they quickly repealed any of the progress that had been made for women's rights at the time. Eventually, this mandatory hijab law was enforced. But, the hijab laws are really just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the discriminatory laws affecting women. They're not equal to men in matters of marriage, divorce, custody, inheritance. They're not allowed to go into sporting stadiums. They cannot ride a bike. I mean, it's really as basic as that. So there are a lot of laws on the books that really seek to sort of segregate and subjugate women, take them out of public spaces. And it's really with this idea that women only belong in the domestic sphere. So the idea is that a woman's place is at home. That's what the government believes, and they're very proud of that. And the role is really to be subservient to the husband. And so a lot stems from that, and also from the Sharia laws, the Islamic laws that the state has adopted as the law that rules the country.
Oh, it's absolutely devastating situation. It's really why all of us in the international community need to really take a united stance against the regimes. It's cruelty at the heart of it. And that's why I love your End Gender Apartheid campaign. It's just such a powerful rallying cry. Can you tell us a little bit more about your campaign and what you hope it achieves?
Yeah, so we launched this campaign, which if you visit endgenderapartheid.today, you can see an open letter and all the key signatories. But we launched this campaign on March 8th on International Women's Day that was launched by more than 100 key signatories who are Iranian and Afghan women, judges, lawyers, activists, human rights defenders. And they are calling on the international community to recognize gender apartheid as a crime under international law. When I spoke to some of the women, they hadn't realized that it actually isn't a crime under international law. So it's certainly a crime, but it's as defined as gender apartheid is not a crime. And what I mean by that is that the crime of apartheid is only racial apartheid. And that's born out of the experience of South Africa. Obviously, that is why we have the crime of apartheid. But essentially, it only applies to racial hierarchies. It does not apply to gender. But when you swap race for gender in the definition, it very accurately describes the situation of women living under the Taliban in Afghanistan and living under the Islamic Republic in Iran. So we're seeking to codify this as an international crime. That's not going to be easy. It's going to take a while, probably a few years to really make that a reality. But we're seeking the inclusion of gender apartheid in the Crimes Against Humanity Convention that's being negotiated globally, and that the Sixth Committee at the UN, which deals with legal matters, would be shepherding along. And we also really want countries around the world to adopt it as part of their national legislation.
It's incredible what you're aiming to do, and I completely believe that you're going to get there. It's quite hard to believe that gender apartheid is not a crime in international law. If you do succeed, what do you think it will lead to?
A few things. I mean, part of it is really wanting there to be the legal option to hold perpetrators accountable in international and national courts under international laws. But there's also a real policy dimension to this. I think one thing that has really struck us with the experience of South Africa is how there was such a movement for change within the country, obviously, but the efforts of the international community undoubtedly played a massive role in ensuring that that regime ceased to be and that the apartheid regime in South Africa was dismantled. Too often it's sort of waved away as a cultural relativist issue, which is really unfortunate. The women in Iran, the women and girls in Iran, basically were risking their lives for months now to show the international community that they don't want to live under those laws. So it's clearly not their culture. They're saying something very different. And I think when it comes to women's issues, a lot of times this is dismissed as, something that is just cultural and that nobody should be getting involved in. But the women are clearly telling us that they want an internationalized response.
The political news cycle in America and England, we see it for a little bit, and then about what's going on in Iran and Afghanistan, and then it disappears, and it's never front and center on everyone's mindset when it's still very much happening day to day to the women that are living out there. Beyond this campaign, which I think is an absolutely wonderful campaign, what else is needed for the women life freedom movement to be successful, and also for the women and girls to be able to live freely in Iran?
One of the biggest things is just making sure that, the news doesn't go away. People continuing to talk about the situation in Iran, to share content from people that they follow who post about the situation in Iran, that's key. I hope everybody will put their name on the open letter that is on endgenderapartheid.today and share that content and really draw attention to this. But that's what I'd like to see to continue on.
Well, I'll certainly be doing all of those things and hopefully continually spreading the message. And this is a call out to other people out there to do the same. Thank you for chatting to me. I mean, honestly, what you're doing is amazing. And it's one of those things that when you hear about it, it just feels like a no-brainer. You can't believe that nobody else has thought about it before. So well done for getting off the ground, and well done for making it happen.
And to be clear, other people definitely did discuss this before. I did not come up with the idea. It's something that Iranian and Afghan women have been discussing for a long time in terms of gender apartheid, and people have been thinking about. But I think bringing us all together in this campaign that so visibly and strongly calls for this to be codified is the thing that has really helped maybe move things along now. And so I hope we'll continue to see progress. But thank you so much for having me on.
It's been great talking to you. Thank you.